19th century during a time when warfare was rapidly evolving. It all began in 1859 at the Battle of Solferino in northern Italy. Henry Dunant, a Swiss businessman, witnessed the horrifying aftermath of this battle. Around 40,000 soldiers lay dead, wounded, or abandoned on the battlefield. Shocked by the suffering, Dunant organized local civilians to care for the wounded regardless of their nationality. Dunant's experience inspired him to write a memory of Solferino in 1862, which called for the creation of neutral organizations to care for wounded soldiers. This idea led to the founding of the International Committee of the Red Cross, also known as the ICRC, in 1863, and the First Geneva Convention in 1864. In 1864, Geneva Convention was groundbreaking. Signed by 12 nations, it established the principle of neutrality for medical services in war. But as warfare changed, so did the need for expanded rules.
World War I revealed the limitation of the 1864 Convention. Soldiers captured as prisoners of war faced harsh treatment, including forced labor, starvation, and disease. In response, the Geneva Convention of 1929 was introduced, focusing specifically on the treatment of prisoners of war. However, the rules established in 1929 were not enough to prevent the atrocities of World War II. During World War II, millions of prisoners were subjected to horrific conditions. For example, over 3 million Soviet prisoners of war died in Nazi camps, and in the Pacific Theater, the Bataan Death March resulted in thousands of deaths. These atrocities highlighted the urgent need to update and expand the laws protecting prisoners of war. In 1949, just 4 years after World War II ended, the international community came together in Geneva, Switzerland, to revise and strengthen the existing conventions. Representatives from 64 countries attended the diplomatic conference. This resulted in 4 updated Geneva Conventions, including the Third Geneva Convention, specifically addressing the treatment of prisoners of war.
The Third Geneva Convention was signed on August 12, 1949, and consisted of 143 articles. These articles established comprehensive rules to protect prisoners of war during armed conflicts. Let's break down some of the key provisions. Provision 1. Humane treatment. Article 13 states that prisoners of war must be treated humanely at all times. Torture, physical abuse, and humiliation are strictly prohibited. The detaining power must protect POWs from acts of violence and public curiosity, such as being used for propaganda. Provision 2. Living conditions. Articles 25 and 26 require the detaining power to provide adequate shelter, food, and medical care. The conditions must match those provided to the detaining power's own soldiers. Provision 3. Communication rights. Articles 70 and 71 of the Convention give POWs the right to communicate with their families. Organizations like the International Committee of the Red Cross facilitate this, delivering letters and care packages to prisoners. Provision 4. Labor and compensation. POWs can be required to perform non-military labor under Articles 49 through 52. However, this labor must not be dangerous or humiliating, and prisoners must be compensated for their work. Provision 5. Judicial protections. Articles 82 through 108 outline judicial protections for POWs. If a prisoner is accused of a crime, they are entitled to a fair trial with the same legal guarantees as members of the detaining power's armed forces.
By 1949, 64 countries signed the Third Geneva Convention. Over the decades, nearly every nation in the world has ratified it, making it one of the most widely recognized treaties in history. Despite its global acceptance, the implementation of the Third Geneva Convention has been tested repeatedly in conflicts like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf War. In the Vietnam War, the treatment of American POWs in North Vietnamese prisons, such as the infamous Hanoi Hilton, raised questions about enforcement. Similarly, during the Gulf War in 1991, Iraq was accused of mistreating coalition POWs, violating the principles of the convention.